Hello, everyone. Welcome to Douglas Now's Beyond the Front Page with Robert Preston Jr. I am Robert Preston Jr. We are on episode 9. We haven't been canceled yet, so I consider that to be a success. A couple of things I want to talk about here today are really we're going to go in several different directions, but we're kind of going to stay on one topic. And what I want to do here today is really frame a debate that we will come back to, that we will continue to talk about over the next couple of years. And we've got, we're in the middle of the midterm elections right now. We got to get through it, and then we'll be back on some local stuff. Same year of a presidential election is when we have a lot of our more contested local races, and we have sporadic local races throughout the years and throughout the election cycle. But a lot of the major local races really correspond or coincide with the presidential election. So not a lot of local stuff on the ballot in November. We get past it again. And I think the November election is going to also set the stage for what's going to happen 2 years later. But after we get through these midterms, we've got most of the constitutional officers in the county, including the sheriff's office or the office of sheriff, up for election. So I want to look at some things, and really this will be ongoing over the course of the next 2 years here in this format, and also on Douglas Now in general. And I think there's some things we really need to look at. I think there's some things we need to discuss, and I hope what we can do over the course of the next few weeks, months, and then looking beyond even into the next couple of years, I want to frame a debate that really needs some attention. And I want our voters, because they're the ones who are going to decide the direction of the community over the next couple of years. I want our voters to ask some questions and to really think long and hard about where our community is and where it's going, because we've got two dynamics at work right now. All right. We've got a very positive, what the right word is, situation, undercurrent, climate, whatever, going on economically. All right. And we've talked about this for you who followed us and have followed us on Douglas Now, with the Douglas Square Shopping Center, the progress that's going on in Douglas and Coffee County. Pilgrim's Pride building a new plant here, investing $75 million in Coffee County. Just 12 years ago, Pilgrim's Pride wasn't even here. Some very forward-thinking people, some very progressive people were able to get Pilgrim's Pride to come back to Douglas and Coffee County, reopen the facilities here, and now building a new plant here in Douglas and Coffee County that is going to be tremendous for our community. All right. So we have a lot of good things going on. Underneath that, though, if you dig below the surface, there are also some things going on that are not so good, and some things that have the opportunity to completely undo all the positive that's being done right now. And I don't want to spend too much time. I know news people get accused of spending too much time on negative stories and on negative things. I don't want to get into that territory, but I do think that we need to look at some of the negative things that are happening and address those and try to formulate some type of plan to maximize the opportunities for growth and really prosperity that we have right now. So that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And really what I've been thinking about over the last week is where we're headed from a crime standpoint. And there's some things that really, really bother me, because in addition to doing DouglasNow.com, I also have another business, and many of my friends are business owners. And I know the challenges that I face and the challenges that we all face with regard to finding people to work, how some of these criminal activities and criminal trends really in Coffee County affect our ability to hire employees, keep our doors open, and be able to deliver the products and services that are a part of our everyday careers. So there's a lot going on, and what I want people to do again is to think beyond the typical issues and think beyond what we generally consider when we go to the polls. And I want some folks to ask some hard questions. And I want to hold our leaders, I want to hold their feet to the fire because, and we're going to talk about this in just a few minutes, but you look at what our community leaders get upset about. You you think about what mobilizes people who consider themselves leaders, and it's not things that are going to make a long-term difference in our community. It's things that offer a couple of talking points that you can build a narrative around, but aren't going to really make a difference. And I think that and I don't mean to sound cliche or pithy here, but we're sort of at a crossroads where we can choose what direction we want to go. Do we want to maximize the opportunities that we have in front of us, or do we want to waste them because we're not addressing problems that can derail the direction that we're headed? So that's really what we're sort of set the stage here today, and we're going to continue to talk about it over the coming months and coming years. And one of the things that really got me thinking about this was the tragic shooting death of Savion McCray just a little over a week ago. By the time we get this posted, it'll be nearly 2 weeks ago that Savion was killed. He was killed over in Lanier County, traveling back to Douglas. Had 2 occupants of the vehicle that he was in. It was sort of a drive. I mean, I guess, I've never really looked up what the definition of a drive-by shooting is, but a vehicle passed theirs. They were on the road driving back to Douglas, and a vehicle passed their vehicle and shot into their vehicle, and everyone in the vehicle was hit. Sadly, Savion was the most seriously injured and did not survive his injuries. And he was a good kid, very well thought of. One of the things, I guess, why it's always, or has been, on my mind since it happened is my wife taught him in elementary school over at Eastside Elementary. And she said he was a great kid, great student, never had any problems. I talked to other teachers who said the same thing. It was a young man who had a bright future ahead of him, and that future has been snuffed out. And he's not the only one. Now, if there is a silver lining in this story, and I don't know that it's, silver lining may not be the right word, but there has been an arrest made in connection with his death. Shimon Jaquavius Campbell, age 19, of Douglas, has been arrested and is being held in the Coffee County Jail, charged with murder. Likely will not get out if he's found guilty. He will certainly not get out as 19 years old. If convicted, at 19 years old, he is facing a very, very long prison sentence, and more arrests are probably going to come from this. So again, the investigation is ongoing. But as I was thinking about Savion's death, I wanted to think about, or I began to think about others who we've lost. So I went back, and over the last year, going back to July, and this was a real quick search I did on the Douglas Now website. I may have missed someone, but as I went through the stories and went through our coverage, I think this is a pretty comprehensive list. And this is going back to July of last year. So basically 1 year ago, Joshua LaShawn Brown, age 21, was killed at Georgian Wood Apartments. Now, there has been an arrest in his death as well. Andrew Benjamin, charged. He was arrested on the 13th of October, 2021. So again, I remember when that happened at Georgian Wood Apartments. A lot of people around for the longest time didn't get an arrest, went from July to October. Strangely enough, with so many people around, nobody saw anything. And that's a common theme that we'll run into in these investigations. A lot of the people around the victims know exactly what happened and know exactly who did what, but they won't talk. And that creates a lot of problems on a lot of different levels. Christmas Eve of 2021, there was a baby, an infant, killed in Douglas, killed in the Oak Park community, I believe. Quantaris Brockington, age 21, was arrested and charged with the child's death. So now we've got two. Ray Barnes killed in January. Savion killed a week and a half ago. And then Anita Floyd was killed in Access County. Now, I mentioned that because a man from Douglas, Marcus Hunt, was arrested and charged with her murder. Very, very brutal death. Very brutal. Okay, I won't go into details, but it was bad. Not that there's not a murder that isn't bad, but the way this one was carried out was particularly heinous. So we've got 5 murders either in Coffee County or connected to Coffee County over the last year, and really over the last 11 months, because we're not quite in July yet. We're close, but we're not quite in July. And that seems to me to be a pretty a pretty good amount for a community our size, and particularly you throw Atkinson County in. There have been some other incidents down there as well. So aside from these murders, you've got the drug arrests that we've made, aggravated assaults. I didn't look all of those up. We wouldn't have time to go into all of those. Armed robberies. And all of these, there's a common thread that runs with a lot of these crimes. They don't happen in a vacuum, and they don't happen by themselves. There are a lot of factors in our community, a lot of things working together in a bad way that lead to these crimes. And if you look around and you pay attention, I think a very clear picture shows up pretty quickly. And that is that we've got a serious problem in Douglas and Coffee County. We've got a serious problem. We've got too many young people dying, too many young people being arrested on drug charges, being arrested for armed robberies, being arrested for aggravated assaults. Too many crimes are going unsolved. Too much bad stuff is happening here. All right. Now, not every crime that takes place is related to drugs, but most crimes are. If you eliminate drugs, you eliminate the influence that drugs and drug dealers have in a community. In any community, you're going to probably eliminate 90% or so of crimes, maybe more than that. And if and I'm talking primarily illegal drugs, but if you want to throw alcohol in the mix, it's probably 95, 96, 97%. And most of the rest of the crimes probably happen because of crimes of passion. All right. So that's where most of your crimes are going to come from. Crimes of passion are going to be drug related in some way. Now, the drug related crimes know no socioeconomic boundaries, no racial boundaries, they know no gender boundaries. All right. If you're involved in illegal drugs in any way, or the abuse of alcohol or any similar drug, you are putting yourself at risk. You're putting your family at risk. You're putting your livelihood at risk. And there's really, if you get deep into that world, there's really only 2 places that you end up, and one is in a cemetery and the other's in prison. That's where that lifestyle leads. And we have too many young people who are choosing that lifestyle. And as I look around our community, I don't see any time really that it's been easier to have a very productive, very prosperous life and lifestyle than there is now. You can graduate from Coffee High School. There are several 4-year degrees from which to choose at South Georgia State College. You also have tremendous programs, tremendous vocational programs where you can earn a very nice living if you get into these fields from Wiregrass Tech. And then you can go to work right here in Douglas and Coffee County. You can go to elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and then to work right here in Douglas and Coffee County if you want to, at a job, making a very, very good wage and have a very nice lifestyle for yourself. Okay. But yet at the same time, it seems that we have a more difficult time convincing kids to go in that direction. It seems to be easier to try to take a shortcut in some way. And those shortcuts don't lead to good outcomes. All right. They certainly do not lead to good outcomes. What I want to see is the influence of drugs and drug dealers significantly decreased, if not eliminated. I know it's probably a little unrealistic to think that you can eliminate all of it, but to significantly reduce the impact that illegal drugs have on our community. We've got, in addition to the violent crimes that I mentioned, we've got entirely too many drug overdoses. And one thing that we don't do at Douglas Now, and really I don't see it in too many local news outlets, is cover the overdoses, the accidental drug overdoses. If we did that, I don't know how many stories we would have. There are accidental drug overdoses on a weekly basis. We've got a terrible problem, and fentanyl is wreaking havoc on our rural communities. It absolutely is. It is extremely dangerous, extremely deadly, and people are having a very difficult time with it. We also have an increase of heroin in our community, and it's kind of interesting how that came about. All right, but there are some drugs that are no longer as readily available on the streets as they were a couple of years ago, and many of those individuals who are addicted to those particular drugs can't get them, so now they're turning to heroin. Well, some of these folks are buying heroin, they're getting fentanyl instead, and they're taking a dose of heroin, or what they think is a dose of heroin, that's actually a dose of fentanyl. It ends up being a lethal dose, and people are dying. People are dying way, way too much at the hands of these particular drugs. It's a tremendous, tremendous toll on people of all ages and people of all socioeconomic statuses. Again, there are no, the bad stuff that we're talking about here, it doesn't stop at a given community. It doesn't stop at a given age. All right. It transcends all of that, and it affects everyone. So what I want to see is our community get behind the steps, the measures, the processes that we need to undertake and we need to implement to eradicate and eliminate the influence of these substances. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have. I think if we can do that, then a lot of the other issues within families, issues with employment, issues with housing, I think a lot of those will take care of themselves. All right. But in order to do that, we've got to get to the root issue. And there are a couple of ways I want to talk about here in just a second that I think we can at least start the conversation, start the dialogue, and begin to lay a foundation for working through some of these problems. What are those? We'll get to those in just a second. We're going to take a short break here at the end of our first segment. We'll be back in just a minute.
So I'm 12 years old. My dad buys a hardware store. Dad worked really hard. He worked 3 jobs. He taught high school science, he ran the hardware store, and he sold insurance at night. Dad's work ethic and honesty has made a big impact on me as an advisor. We learned the value of money. We learned what money could do. Working in that store, we learned what money meant to people. Being a breadwinner, taking care of family, providing a roof over our heads. We worked all these years to get to this place called retirement. And whether you like to fish, golf, go to restaurants, play with the grandkids, travel, a good solid retirement income plan can help you do the things that you want to do. It allows you to retire with confidence. And at Story Wealth Management Group, we work with people in retirement and before retirement. We don't know what to expect in retirement. You've never done it before. But we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people over the last 25 years to help with that new reality called retirement. At Story Wealth Management Group, we work hard to make sure we address all the issues that may come up to help make sure that you reach your goals. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. But it's not about me. It's about your future. It's about your family. It's about your story.
Welcome back to Beyond the Front Page with Robert Preston Jr. I am Robert Preston Jr. So, as we went to break, we were talking about what we need to do to begin to lay the foundation to address some of these problems. Well, my question is, when I look at this, and this is something that I've been talking about with several people here for the last couple of weeks, because when I think about this, it really does make me mad, because we have some community leaders. We have some who are bona fide community leaders and others who are self-proclaimed community leaders. And I want to know where our leaders are. What are our leaders talking about? We've had several high-profile violent crimes that have taken some very promising young people from our community. Where's the outrage? Where are the questions? Where are the conversations? Our leaders, and again, mainly the self-proclaimed leaders, have been extremely quiet when it comes to this. Now, I always want to know why. Why are we quiet? I think if we get too deep into these issues and too deep into what's causing these issues, to some degree, it's going to be an indictment on where we are as a community and what we're paying attention to. I want to know who's framing the debates. What gets people mobilized? I go to government meetings. I go to city commission meetings. I go to county commission meetings. All right. Occasionally we go to school board meetings. Don't go to a lot of school board meetings. And the reason why is because school issues are difficult to navigate. And you're dealing with so many different complexities when you're trying to deal with issues, particularly with any problems that come up. And it's just it's hard to do, and unless it's an exceptional case. I mean, we follow what's happening in the school system, but we don't really get into it much, again, because it's just pretty complicated. But I watch what gets people upset, and I haven't seen anybody attend a city commission meeting or a county commission meeting and discuss the drug issue, to discuss the violence that's destroying families, the violence that's claiming the lives of our young people. That's not what people are talking about. What do we get upset about? We get upset about election issues. And listen, I understand elections are important. The integrity of our elections is extremely important. Okay. But in the state of Georgia, if you want to vote, you can vote. Okay. If you want to vote, you can vote. We live in one of the easiest states in the country in which to vote. All right. And I know that Coffee County is under scrutiny right now because of some issues that popped up during the 2020 presidential election. We've covered those a little bit. I know I mentioned it some last week. If you watched our previous episode, if you watched episode 8, I'm going to do some more digging, some more research. What's interesting, and I hadn't really thought about this, and I don't know if anybody else has. This is just an aside. We're chasing a rabbit here. The scrutiny that we're under, the lawsuits that have been filed are civil suits. They're not criminal cases. Okay, so with regard to the 2020 election here in Douglas and Coffee County, nothing is criminal yet. And I had said last week that I don't plan on doing a whole lot more on this case until there are charges, until there's an indictment. And while right now that's still my plan, I'm still sticking to that. I want to dig beneath the surface a little bit and find out exactly what our issues are. And I mean, I've read the stories, I've talked to a few people, But again, the election issue will take care of itself because it's an issue that goes beyond the borders and the boundaries of Coffee County. That's an issue that goes to the Secretary of State's office. It goes up to the governor's mansion, and to some degree, well, not to some degree, very much to a degree, it goes up to the Department of Justice, because anything that happens with elections is part of, goes to the federal government as well. The state handles elections in the state, but there are also federal guidelines that oversee voting. So election issues are going to take care of themselves. Okay. We're not really going to do much with election issues at the local level. Okay. All right. And these players who are nosing around Coffee County, submitting open records requests, and looking at what happened in the aftermath of the 2020 election are not from Coffee County. All right. So it's limited with what we can do locally. But I see people being upset about that. That's what people are talking about. All right. Also, one of the biggest issues of last year, going back to about this time, going back to June, July of last year, was the ongoing saga of the federal ARPA money. And I'm not going to go into that. We covered that extensively. And if you followed that issue, you know that it ultimately resolved itself in December and January when the city allocated its ARPA funds and gave it back to the citizens. Okay. But that's what people got mobilized about. That's what people came to the city commission meetings about. Nobody comes to the county commission meetings about much of anything unless there's a road being closed. And then they want to make sure people who live on that particular road want to make sure that they're not going to be inconvenienced if that road closes or if a business opens up or something like that. Zoning issues, road closures, that kind of thing. That's what gets people upset at the county level. All right. So nobody's talking about this other stuff. Nobody's talking about it. And this is the one thing that I see that really has an opportunity to cripple us as a community. And I think in a lot of ways, some of our leaders are letting us down. I want to back up a couple years ago. Mayor Tony Polk actually did mention this. He held a town hall meeting at the George Washington Carver Shopping Center and discussed with citizens what he had seen and what he had observed on that property. And he was met with a tremendous amount of resistance. Many of the individuals who live in that area came out and disagreed with him. And Mayor Polk had a lot of facts and figures and personal observations. He owns the property right next to the George Washington Carver Shopping Center. He based his discussions and his, I don't want to say debate, but his presentation on what he had seen. And he had a bag full of shell casings, spent shell casings that he had picked up from the George Washington Carver Shopping Center parking lot where people had been firing guns. He would go there the morning after and he would pick up these shell casings. And people continued to deny that there was any bad behavior going on at that property. Just a couple of weeks after that meeting, a few blocks away, somebody was shot and killed. All right. And so here we have one of our leaders, and I think someone who has done a tremendous job as a leader in our community, speaking out against some of these issues and was met with resistance. And yet you look at the headlines, you look at the stories, you look at what's happening, you look at the grieving families, and you can see, you know what? The mayor wasn't wrong. And the mayor was doing it because he has a concern for our community, because he has a concern for young people. And you can say what you want to about Mayor Polk, but he has been, as, I don't know if the right word is aggressive or progressive, or if they're both the right words, but he has been very active and very adamant in getting our young people involved in civic activities with the mayor's youth council, with teen court, with those types of programs and projects. He has been trying to bring kids into the process, to show them a different side of our community and show them a different side of our government. I think he's been very successful doing it. But he is one of the few who is doing that. And when he speaks out And when he talks about some of the very same things that we're talking about, he gets met with resistance. One thing to keep in mind, if someone's going to speak out about this, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. There are going to be problems. You are going to come under scrutiny. All right. And it's not, people may not treat you very, very nicely. But people aren't talking about the drugs. People aren't talking about gangs. People aren't talking about how these problems affect businesses' abilities to hire employees. And when you do get someone hired, when you send them for a drug test, a lot of times people can't pass drug tests. We've had a terrible problem with that in my business. Had a terrible problem with it. We've had several people flunk drug tests. All right. Several people go through the whole process. Reference is good. Everything's good. Send them for a drug test. Fail the drug test. All right. What happens here is any opportunities that we're having for growth and prosperity get hampered a lot of times before we even get them off the ground. That's what's happening here. And I want people to look at this in the overall, under the overall umbrella of what's best for our community. I want everybody to prosper. I don't care who you are. If you've got a business, if you're working, I want you to prosper. I want you to make as much money as you possibly can and have the best lifestyle for your family and your children. That's what I want. Everybody. I don't care who you are, everybody. But that's not really where things are right now. And it's going to take someone very strong, or a group of people who are very strong and very determined, who will not take no for an answer, and who will stand up to the opposition that they're going to get, because they're going to receive some opposition. They're going to receive some opposition from some people who have labeled themselves leaders, who don't want to see the kinds of things that I'm talking about happening to actually happen. So it's not going to be easy. And when you look at the stories that we've covered, because over the last couple of weeks or so, we've made some changes at Douglas Now. And if you followed our page and followed our coverage, you can see those changes. And you can see the stories that we've put up. And what I want people to do, again, is to talk about these stories, but talk about them in a good way. If you read the comments, if you read what people are saying, they're not talking about this in a good way. You'd see that there's a lack of respect for law enforcement. There's a lack of respect for the rule of law. And to some degree, there's a lack of respect for human life that comes out in some of these comments. And when you read through the comments, you see sort of a troubling picture emerges. All right. A troubling picture emerges. People aren't on the same page. People aren't interested in doing what's best for our community. They're interested in doing what's best for themselves. And that type of selfish inward focus causes a lot of problems. I challenge our leaders, I challenge our churches, I challenge our pastors to step up and begin to address these issues at the very basic level. All right. Address them at the very basic level. And you've got to present a united front or nothing's going to happen. So I mentioned sheriff's elections, some other things coming up in the next couple of years. How does all this affect that? And I don't know. We've all heard names of people who are going to run for sheriff. Nobody has come out and officially declared. That won't come for another, I don't know, year or more before people start doing that. So what would I like to see out of our sheriffs? Our sheriff's candidates, whoever sits in that office next. Well, one thing I want to see is that we have to get along with other agencies, the various law enforcement agencies, and there are 4 or 5 in Coffee County now. You've got the sheriff's department, you've got the police department, you've got the GBI, you've got the South Georgia College police force, you have the school systems police department now. Those are 4. And then you have the various other agencies that are in and out of Coffee County from time to time who conduct operations here. So one thing that I think needs to happen is that there's got to be cooperation among all of these agencies. The city and the sheriff's department have to get along. Sheriff's department and city have to get along. Everyone has to work together. And I'm going to mention this. Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm going to. Not so much worried about who does what, who gets the credit for what, whose jurisdiction. Let's eliminate the crime. regardless of who does what, where it happens, who gets the credit for it, who's in charge, who's not in charge. Let's work together. If we're working together, we're going to make a much greater impact than if there's some type of wedge or what have you between one or more agencies. Now, I think that's where it starts. You've got to be able to work together because, you know, these folks who are doing bad things cross over from city to county. State Patrol, I forgot to mention State Patrol. That's 5. So you've got a 5th agency there. Uh, and the State Patrol a lot of times is on the front lines because a lot of this stuff takes place in vehicles. And they're the primary traffic enforcement in our community. So everybody's got to work together, and everybody has got to be willing to decrease their influence in order to increase the prosperity, safety, and what have you of our community. That's where it's going to start. So, I've had people ask me, given the names that we've heard who are going to run for sheriff, who would I vote for? And I'm not going to tell you who I will vote for, but I will absolutely tell you who I will not vote for. All right. The first time, I haven't heard this yet. I haven't heard it yet, but the first time I hear a candidate say that they're the people's sheriff, or that I hear somebody say I'm going to have an open door policy, that individual will not get my vote. Will absolutely not get my vote, because the people's sheriff and open door policy means that it's going to be business as usual, that we're going to continue the policies and procedures that have led us down the path that we're on now, because that's been the big buzzword out of law enforcement going back however many years. Open door policy. What that says to me is that the offenders, alleged offenders, of course, are going to take precedent over victims. And as long as that is, and that has been the case for a long time in Coffee County, if that continues to be the case, if that's the direction that we're going to speed towards moving forward, I want no part of it. All right. Now, you do want a sheriff you can talk to. You do want a sheriff you can get on the phone. The sheriff is the highest ranking is not really the right word, but the preeminent, that's not the right word either, but maybe for all practical purposes, the sheriff's the most powerful elected official in a county in Georgia. All right. Constitutional officer, tremendous power, tremendous influence. You want to be able to have access to your sheriff, but I think it stops at being the people's sheriff. The sheriff should enforce law and order. First and foremost, the sheriff should make the community a safer place, not run a re-election campaign 365 days a year out of his office. And we've seen that too many times in the past. All right. Not necessarily saying it's happening right now, but we have seen that in the past. So I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to vote for. I'm not 100% sure right now. I'm going to wait a little bit and see what happens over the next couple of years. I'm hoping that we can see a significant change from this point forward. That's what I want to see the next couple of years, to see things done a lot differently in our community, because I don't like where we're headed. I don't like it. And I want to see somebody step up and make a concerted effort to change this direction. All right. But I will tell you this. I hear people sheriff, I hear open door policy. No, thank you. No, thank you. You're not getting my vote. You're not going to get it. All right. And if I hear every candidate say it, no candidate will get my vote, because that's not what I'm looking for. That's not what I think is going to make a difference in our community. We need someone who is going to work with the other agencies in our community. We need and we need a department that is going to be aggressive without being abusive in regards to enforcing the law. That's what we need. And I'm hoping that that people will follow along with me in my quest to see the person who has those qualities get elected. So which candidate's that going to be? I don't know, but I'm going to be talking to all of them, and I'm going to be asking all of them a lot of questions. And I want the assurance from, and I'd love to have the assurance from all of them that we're going, that we're going to do what needs to be done to clean our community up. So as we close today, those are some things I've been thinking about with regard to our community, where we're headed, where we've been. In a nutshell, we have entirely too much violent crime going on in our community. Entirely too much violent crime. On the outside, things look very good in Coffee County, and they are. We are headed in a direction we have not been in a long time, but there's another side. There's another side to the coin. There's a much more insidious undercurrent in our community right now, and we've got to stop it. And I don't see a lot of people who could have the influence to bring about the change that we need being vocal about this. It's a hard topic to talk about. It's not going to be easy, and those who do speak out are going to be met with resistance. A lot of people aren't going to like some of the things that I've said here tonight. All right, people who watch this, I expect to get a little bit of negative feedback from it, but that's okay. I've been beating this drum for a while, and I stand behind everything I've said here today. And I'm going to continue to address this and talk about this until somebody does something. Until somebody does something. So, born and raised here, except for just a couple of years when I was in college. I've been in Douglas my whole life. I've raised my children here. I hope my children come back here and work in this community. And I want it to be the best possible community that it can be for everyone. And in order for that to happen, we've got to have some changes. So, leaders, let's talk about this stuff and let's reach a consensus and let's move our community in a different direction than we have been going here lately. Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. We've had a blast here this afternoon. As always, thank you for those who follow us and give us feedback. We appreciate it. We're going to continue to do this. We're going to continue to bring the news and views in our community that you won't get on the homepage, even on Facebook. In order to dig a little deeper, you're going to have to get beyond the front page, and that's what we're going to do right here each and every week. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.